So I'm here because Yahoo posted a link to a list of the 25 top stand-up comedians of all time. And there were a couple egregious mistakes. It was largely pretty accurate, but I want to make some amendments. The list can be found at wealthygorilla.com/funniest stand-up comedians. So if you're unfamiliar with lists of the funniest comedians, number 1 and number 2 are just like number 1 and number 2 in rap are Biggie and Tupac. Number 1 and number 2 are always either Richard Pryor and George Carlin or George Carlin and Richard Pryor. Their list happened to post George Carlin as number 1 and Richard Pryor as number 2, which gives me a slight tangent to go on. The night that George Carlin filmed his last special, Life is Worth Losing, I happened to be walking by right off Broadway, the Beacon Theater, and I walked by the loading dock. The loading dock door was open to the Beacon Theater, and I didn't know George Carlin had planned to tape what happened to be his last special there that night. I just saw an open door to the Beacon Theater, so I snuck in and walked past all the flotsam and debris on the stage that was the set for George Carlin, and walked out onto the Beacon Theater stage and did my shitty ass act for an empty house the same night that George Carlin filmed his last special. So that's kind of a fond memory of mine, kind of playing to an empty Beacon Theater. It was really kind of a nerve-wracking experience because I didn't know if I was going to get arrested for breaking and entering. But their list is, number 1 was George Carlin, and it's understandable because George Carlin took his 7 Dirty Words, one of his earlier set lists, after he went dark or blue from his Clean and Wholesome Act. In 1978, it was taken to the Supreme Court in FCC versus Pacifica for freedom of speech. So George Carlin is listed as number 1 as changing the culture of stand-up. He was also one of the first people to make it a standard for comedians to put out a new hour every year. Up until George Carlin, comedians were doing their same jokes their entire career, you know, in the borscht belt, the early days of stand-up. Number 2 is Richard Pryor, and that's understandable because Richard Pryor was the most honest, funny, and trend-setting comedian. He dissected race in a way that had never been done before, and it's been copied ever since. He was the originator of the stereotypical white guy voice that's really irritating and nerdy. He was the originator, and Richard Pryor would have had a richer career had he not gotten ill when he did. Their number 3 is Robin Williams, and this is where I make an amendment. I think banned from the list of any greatest comedians of all time has to be comedians that don't write their own material and comedians that steal material. And I have to say, whether or not you know this, as funny as Robin Williams is, and Live at the Met changed my life. As a kid, I used to listen to it on car trips, and I didn't understand all the jokes, but the energy was there, and it inspired me to do stand-up. So I have a lot of respect for Robin Williams, but he cannot be on a list of the greatest comedians of all time because he steals material. He stole material, and then he would pay off the people and say, what are you going to do? I'm more famous than you. I'm keeping the joke. Nobody's going to believe it's yours. It's mine. And he would pay off people. So he gets banned just like Carlos Mencia gets banned. Yeah, you can say he's a great ad-libber, but it's easy to ad-lib when you have stock of every joke you've ever heard and you can just steal it. Yeah, I could ad-lib hours of stolen material. I've listened to so much comedy in my lifetime. So Robin Williams, for me, is off the list. Dave Chappelle is number 4. If you haven't seen on Netflix, Dave Chappelle is filmed as receiving the Mark Twain Award for Comedy, and it is well deserved. I think he earned his spot on the list. Their number 5 is Eddie Murphy. Just outright hilarious. Eddie Murphy is brilliant on stage. I think it's too bad that he stopped doing stand-up and just stuck to acting, because we all lost a little bit. Chris Rock is number 6, well earned. Louis C.K. number 7, also well earned. He writes all his own material. He wrote his own show, and he jerks off in front of people, which is whatever. Jerry Seinfeld is number 8, also well earned, but he always ranks a little higher than he deserves, not because he's not hilarious and clean, which is very difficult to do. He ranks higher on the list because of the extreme success of the show Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld, as it is, hasn't put out as much content as some of the other people on this list, but I would say he's definitely in the top 10 greatest comedians of all time. Steve Martin is number 9. I wouldn't put him on this list at all, because I've listened to 10,000 hours of stand-up, and it took until 5 minutes ago for me to ever hear Steve Martin do any stand-up, and I watched about 5 minutes and it was hack. He was wearing a banjo and an arrow through his head. So he's a prop comedian. He was using a camera. So if Steve Martin's going to be on the list at number 9, why don't you just put Carrot Top as number 10? Steve Martin's a hack. Plus, he hasn't done comedy in my entire lifetime, for Christ's sake, so why is he on the list? I understand that a lot of people liked him and he sold out theaters, which is an accomplishment, but if you quit, you're not a die-hard comedian. You don't deserve to be in the top 10 of the best all-time comedians. Bill Burr is number 10, well earned. Bill Burr gets my vote early on for doing the most incredible thing I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, go onto YouTube and type Bill Burr Tells Philly the Truth, or Bill Burr in Philadelphia, or something like that. It's a situation in which he was on a show called The Traveling Virus or something for the radio show Opie and Anthony, which is kind of like a new age Howard Stern show. Very funny, gave a lot of comedians breaks. And Bill Burr was doing the show, and it was like 2 hours into the show, and the crowd of thousands of people in an amphitheater, a huge venue, were booing people off stage, and Bill Burr got booed, and he just laid into the audience and tore them apart for being worthless people, and he ended up turning a stadium full of boos into a standing ovation. When I started doing stand-up, my first year in stand-up in 2005, I did a show with Bill Burr, who was then unknown, had none of his specials out, totally unknown, and it was a show called Comedy on Columbus, one street away from Broadway on the Upper West Side. And I had to bark, which is kind of hand out flyers and talk people into going to the show. I had to bark for the show. And they told me to promote Bill Burr, who has been on the Chappelle Show. If you've seen the Chappelle Show, Bill Burr is the white guy, one of the white guys in the racial draft sketch. So is Bill Burr. But on this show, Comedy on Columbus, I had seen a bunch of headliners who were hack, you know, like Steve Martin, hacks, not funny. And Bill Burr sounded like Will Burr. I had never heard of him. I thought he was going to be another hack. And it ended up being a room, Comedy on Columbus, this gorgeous room. I mean, probably huge for a Manhattan room. Manhattan rooms are like 40 seats big or 100 seats big. This venue at capacity was 600 people, and we barked in. I barked in like 8 people for the show who were scattered all around the room. And just one veteran comedian after the other just bombed on stage, and then Bill Burr took the stage, and honestly annihilated for about 40 minutes. I was dying laughing, everybody in the room. If you can kill in front of 7 people, if you can draw energy out of 7 spaced out people in a room full of 600, you're brilliant. And I became one of the first, and I still stand by it today, one of the first fans, big, huge, big time, all time fans of Bill Burr, before he was the Bill Burr of Carnegie Hall. Back when nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew who he was, to the extent that after the show I ended up talking to him for an hour and a half. On a Friday night he had a free hour and a half to talk to a nobody comedian. And I think it was 8 years after that he sold out Carnegie Hall. So he deserves to be on the list. Rodney Dangerfield is number 11, definitely earned. Mitch Hedberg is number 12. I think he normally ranks higher than he should because he died young, because he didn't put out a ton of content, but he was hilarious, and most importantly, he was unique and original. And it was a great loss when he overdosed. It was terrible. Kevin Hart is number 13. I don't watch a ton of Kevin Hart, but he sold out a football stadium, biggest venue ever sold out. Props to Kevin Hart for that. Jim Gaffigan is number 14. Hot Pockets. Don Rickles is number 15, obviously well earned. Lewis Black is 16. Funny, I think he should be putting out more content now, but he's hilarious. Definitely one of the best people. To put Don Rickles and Lewis Black back to back is just like the attitude segment of comedy. Ricky Gervais is number 17. Again, for TV, I would put him in the top 10. I wouldn't for stand-up. He hasn't earned it yet. I think he's hilarious. He's one of the funniest, most brilliant comedic minds of all time. But he hasn't done a ton of stand-up. Stephen Wright, number 18, well earned. Definitely one of the most out there original people in stand-up history. If you haven't seen Stephen Wright, listen to Something Pony, My Pony, or My whatever. It's just a brilliant act, just absurd comedy. Bill Hicks, number 19. Anybody who worked with Bill Hicks was a fan of Bill Hicks. He's a comedian's comedian. Comedians loved him, and I heard recently that it's a myth that he attacked the audience. The audience actually loved him. I heard it from Patton Oswalt, who probably deserves to be on the list of the 25 best of all time. Patton Oswalt was talking about that on the radio. Number 20 is Bill Cosby, should be earlier. Number 21 is Jim Carrey. If he continued to do stand-up, I would agree with that. His HBO special, An Unusual Act or something like that, is hilarious. Brilliant comedy. Norm Macdonald is number 22, probably the most unique comedian on this list. Norm Macdonald makes me laugh just speaking like factually. He could be reading the obituaries and it would be hilarious. Norm Macdonald just is outright just hilarious in my opinion. Red Fox, number 23, should be earlier. I don't know Red Fox very well, but he's a legend. Bernie Mac, number 24, and rounding out number 25 is Bob Newhart. I disagree with that. I haven't seen his comedy. Again, he's another TV person, and I like to separate TV success from stand-up success. Maybe it's just because I haven't looked him up, but if he was one of the best, you don't have to look up real comedians. They're just out there. You see them. Just like you don't have to listen to the Beatles to know the Beatles, because they are the greatest. You hear them everywhere. Real comedians, you don't have to look for. They're out there. You see them. They're always working. They're always doing shows. They're everywhere. If you're a comedian, you stick to comedy. Just like Jerry Seinfeld had the most successful sitcom of all time and he went right back to stand-up comedy. That's what real comedians do. So I wrote my list, and my list is the top 15 comedians of all time. 10 men, 5 women, but it's actually 30 people. There are 30 There are 25 guys on this list that all deserve to be in the top 10 depending on what mood you're in. My list goes as such: Doug Stanhope, Eddie Izzard, Louis C.K., George Carlin, Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, Red Fox, Stephen Wright, Don Rickles, Rodney Dangerfield, Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, Kevin Hart, Bill Cosby, Dane Cook, Dave Attell, Jim Gaffigan, MARC MARON, and Patrice O'Neill. Oh, you got a couple more. Bill Hicks, Eddie Murphy, Lenny Bruce, Sam Kinison, Jackie Mason, which they didn't include, which is outrageous, and Norm Macdonald, which I put on my list. Conspicuously absent would be Bob Hope, Billy Crystal, and Steve Martin. Steve Martin because he's a hack. I don't think he's funny. He's a prop comedian. If you're going to use him, use Carrot Top, who I've seen is actually kind of... Look, Carrot Top's funny. Stop making fun of him. Just because he looks bizarre and he gets a lot of plastic surgery and lifts weights and takes steroids doesn't mean he's a freak. Maybe it does. Billy Crystal's not on the list because I've never seen him do stand-up. Everybody loves Billy Crystal, though, but he's an actor. He's a great actor, comedic actor. He's not the greatest stand-up. I don't know how much content he has out there, but I've never seen him do stand-up. I know he's done it. I'm not saying I'm a great comedian at all or I deserve to be on any list. I'm just saying I'm a fan of comedy and I've studied it. This is what I'm saying. Bob Hope isn't on the list because he didn't write his own material. And my belief is if you're going to be one of the greatest comedians of all time, you have to have one of the greatest comedic minds. And you can only prove that through writing your own material, like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Dave Chappelle, Jerry Seinfeld, Louis C.K., all these people who are writing tons of content with their great comedic minds. Not Robin Williams who steals stuff. The last but not least I'm going to name are the 5 greatest female comedians of all time. Wanda Sykes, Ellen DeGeneres, Roseanne Barr, Maria Bamford, and Eliza Schlesinger. That is my list of the top 10, depending on your mood, male stand-up comedians of all time and the top 5 female comedians of all time. If you disagree with me, comment below. Put comments in there. If I forgot somebody, comment. If you disagree with me, comment, and I will address your comments. I don't erase any comments, so you can bash me all you want, say whatever you want. Comment below. That's my list.